Minister Narendra Modi and Russian President Vladimir Putin to participate in the 21st Annual India-Russia Summit in New Delhi in a short while from now. Talks are to focus on strengthening strategic partnership. The first 2+2 dialogue takes place between the Foreign and Defence Ministers of India and Russia. External Affairs Minister Dr. SHOIGU calls the partnership special and unique, while Defence Minister RAJNATH Singh appreciates Russia for giving strong support to the country. Says our close cooperation is not targeted against another country. Union Home Minister Amit Shah, in his statement in Parliament on Nagaland, said that action will be taken against the culprits according to law. An SIT has been constituted to investigate the matter, which will submit its report in 30 days. Work in Parliament affected again today due to continuous uproar by the opposition. Rajya Sabha adjourned till tomorrow. Myanmar court sentences ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi to 4 years behind bars. She was found guilty on charges of inciting dissent and breaking COVID rules under a national disasters law. In cricket, India win the Mumbai Test, beat New Zealand by 372 runs. And with this win, Team India has returned to the #1 spot in the ICC Test rankings. And the nation observes the death anniversary of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar as Mahaparinirvan Divas today. President, Vice President, Prime Minister, Speaker paid floral tributes in Parliament premises. Various other programs planned across the country to mark the day. Namaskar, you're with the latest here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy and we're starting with the biggest story of the day, the 21st Annual Summit between India and Russia led by Prime Minister Modi and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Well, India and Russia 21st Annual Summit is being held today in a short while from now. The Annual Summit meeting between India and Russia is the highest institutionalized dialogue mechanism in the strategic partnership between India and Russia, being held for the last 2 decades. Ahead of the Annual Summit, the first ever India-Russia 2+2 Ministerial Dialogue was held in New Delhi as well. Defence Minister RAJNATH Singh and External Affairs Minister Dr. SHOIGU represented the Indian side, while the Russian side was represented by SHOIGU and Sergey Lavrov. In his opening remarks at the dialogue, Defence Minister RAJNATH Singh said that this is a historic day in the bilateral relationship. He said India-Russia defence cooperation has progressed in an unprecedented manner in recent times. He hoped that Russia will remain a major partner for India.
And expansion of armament in our neighborhood and the unprovoked aggression on our northern border since early summer of 2020 have thrown in several challenges. India is confident of overcoming these challenges with its strong political will and inherent capability of its people. India seeks partners who are sensitive and responsive to India's expectations and requirements. Excellencies, I am glad that despite all these challenges, India-Russia defence engagements progressed in an unprecedented manner in recent times.
And Dr. Jaishankar said in his opening remarks that India-Russia ties have been time-tested in a world that has changed so much and have been exceptionally steady. He said the dialogue is a suitable platform to discuss politico-military issues of mutual interest.
We are meeting at a critical juncture in the global geopolitical environment, which is in great flux, especially in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. As close friends and strategic partners, India and Russia have been working together to safeguard our common interests and to ensure peace, progress and prosperity for our peoples. Our ties have been close and time-tested. In a world that has changed so much, they have been exceptionally steady. We have had an active dialogue at political levels and also a strong defense partnership over many years. Our meeting gives us a suitable platform to discuss politico-military issues of mutual interest that are interrelated and cross-cutting. Our discussions today will address the emergence of multipolarity and rebalancing. We look too at the consequences of over-centralized globalization. The COVID-19 pandemic has raised questions about the current model of global affairs, but the long-standing challenges remain even as new ones emerge. Prominent among them are terrorism, violent extremism, and radicalization. The situation in Afghanistan has wider repercussions, including for Central Asia. West Asia or the Middle East continues to present hotspots. Maritime security and safety is another domain of shared concern. We both have a common interest in ASEAN centrality and ASEAN-driven platforms. All in all, there is much to discuss today. I look forward to an open exchange of views that would further strengthen our special and privileged strategic partnership. Thank you, and I would invite Minister Lavrov to make his opening remarks.
And at the same meeting, Russian Foreign Affairs Minister Sergei Lavrov said that the annual India-Russia summit is a unique event and Prime Minister Modi and President Putin share a relationship of great trust and confidence.
I'm confident that the new mechanism is going to turn into an efficient dialogue platform to talk about a wide range of regional and international topics. It'll further deepen our traditional mutual understanding. It'll help reinforce our specially privileged strategic partnership between our countries. Both Russia and India have a similar worldview of a more polycentric, more multipolar, more equitable world order. We advocate similar or identical positions on the most important political and military issues. We speak in favor of international law, reinforcing the collective principle of international affairs. We adhere to the principle of non-interference in the domestic affairs of other countries, and we have great respect for cultural and civilizational diversity of our world. This creates a very good platform for productive work in the framework of the new mechanism of the Russian-Indian dialogue that is being launched today, and I would like to join my colleague in thanking our Indian hosts for their warm hospitality and for organizing our work.
And Russian Defense Minister Sergei SHOIGU said India-Russia cooperation in military technical sector is significant. An agreement in this regard was also inked between the two sides today, which will help in promoting regional peace.
सैन्य तकनीकी क्षेत्रों में ये विशेष रूप से महत्वपूर्ण है हमारे देशों के संबंधों के लिए। इस विकसित हो रही दुनिया में आज जो अंतर सरकारी आयोग की बैठक हुई, मेरे समकक्ष और मैं, हमने हमारे बीच विस्तृत चर्चा हुई हमारे सहयोग के बारे में रक्षा के क्षेत्र में, और हम आगे के लिए योजनाएं हमने बनाए। मुझे विश्वास है कि जो दोनों देश के जो एजेंसियां हैं वे योगदान करेंगे ताकि हम क्षेत्रीय विश्वास को बढ़ा सकें और वैश्विक स्तर पर सुरक्षा को बढ़ा सकें।
Well, the significance of today's developments, all that is taking place today between India and Russia cannot be stressed enough. Just to understand the depth and the width of it, let's go across to my colleague AMRITPAL Singh for more on this. And Amrit, while you wait for that key bilateral to commence between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, just tell us first about this 2+2 ministerial dialogue. It was the first time that India and Russia have held this sort of a dialogue, despite having such a long decades-long relationship. So the significance there, and not just in terms of the deliverables that we've had from this meeting, where that joint manufacturing of Kalashnikov rifles is concerned.
You're right, Gautam, that this is the inaugural 2+2 dialogue. But India and Russia have had long-standing ties, as we heard both Defense Minister and External Affairs Minister refer to that during the opening remarks of the 2+2 dialogue. The two countries have had an active dialogue at both political levels and a very strong defense partnership. Now, what they've done this time around is that they've institutionalized this dialogue mechanism. So it's the first institutionalized dialogue which will look at defense and strategic issues. Symbolically, yes, you are upgrading this dialogue to the level of partnership where you have a dialogue in the same format, in a 2+2 format with the Quad countries. That's you have a similar dialogue with the United States, you have with Japan, and you have with Australia. And Russia becomes the only country outside the Quad countries that you have institutionalized 2+2 dialogue, where the foreign ministers and the defense ministers have meet annually and review the progress made. So in that sense, you've stepped up your relationship. But having said that, you share a special and privileged partnership with Russia since 2010, and a strategic partnership for over 2 decades. Since 2000, we have a strategic partnership with them. So while there is a very active relationship both in the political domain and in the military and defense domain, the structured dialogue, today was the first structured dialogue where various issues related to, of course, bilateral relations, bilateral defense agreements, etc. were signed. The 4 agreements that were signed today, increasing the tenure of the IRGC military technical cooperation to formalizing the AK-203 the joint venture production in India at Korba, which the cabinet approved, the Indian cabinet approved days before President Putin came calling on New Delhi.
Yes.
But apart from that, the situation, as the defense minister referred to, that we are seeking a responsible and a partner who's sensitive to our concerns, especially given the challenges that we face on the northern border, clearly referring to Russia's friend China and the row that we have in Ladakh and the military standoff that exists in Ladakh, which has been only partially diffused. So clearly the issues of that, of the situation in Afghanistan, of cooperation in terms of taking positions at various multilateral fora were discussed at this 2+2 dialogue.
Well, certainly, and perhaps we will have more to look forward to where the summit meet itself is concerned, because going beyond the strategic military aspect of the relationship, India and Russia have multiple levels of interaction and cooperation in different fields, ranging from energy to space to education to, of course, people-to-people ties. All this gamut of issues as well. And how opportune do you think it is that this time around, because it didn't happen the last year it couldn't happen, but this time around it's happening physically, and President Putin, who's not been really stepping out of Russia in recent times for very, very key meetings in Glasgow, before that in Italy where you were, has come over to India?
That's right. The significance that President Putin, the only world leader that President Putin's met during the past 1 year during this COVID regime, is the U.S. President when he traveled to Geneva to hold a bilateral meeting with him.
Yes.
And he stepped out of his country now for a formal, summit level meet. So obviously it speaks about the importance that Russia attaches to its relationship with India, and also the personal chemistry, the bond of trust that exists between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, to which the External Affairs Minister also referred to in his remarks. As you said, this relationship is a multifaceted relationship. I would see that it stands on the 5 pillars of politics, defense and military affairs, civil nuclear energy, hydrocarbons and energy in general, including the renewable energy,
yes,
anti-terrorism cooperation, and space. These are the main areas, though you have other areas like culture, people-to-people exchanges, etc. But these are the 5 pillars on which the relationship stands. And there are multiple groups under the India-Russia Intergovernmental Commission that regularly meet. Over the past 1 year, about 15 working groups have met at various levels. The defense minister himself has traveled to Moscow. The External Affairs met SERGEI Lavrov, his counterpart. The Minister of Steel has had interactions with his counterpart. There are multiple interactions in terms of in areas of defense, trade. There are military exercises that regularly go on. There are even in the space program in Gaganyaan, there are space travelers who were trained at space engineers trained in Russia. So multiple interactions keep going on around the year. These annual mechanisms like the annual summit or now the 2+2 dialogue or the foreign office consultations at the ministerial level are institutionalized mechanisms, but other interactions keep taking place, and this is in these diverse areas, and this is reflected in the outcomes. If you look at the trade targets the two countries had set for them, you're doing very well. It's progressing very well. Even as I speak, Gautam, I hope my cameras can show you that the Prime Minister has arrived here at the Hyderabad House, where he shall be receiving President Putin, who shall be arriving in a little while. I can see right in front of me Prime Minister Narendra Modi arriving here at the Hyderabad House to meet to receive.
Yes, I can hear you, Amrit. We're about to get those images as well of Prime Minister Modi arriving at Hyderabad House, and very soon he'll be receiving President Putin there as well for that key bilateral meet. It could not take place last year because of COVID, but this time around it's happening physically and not in the virtual mode, as we've seen so many other bilateral meetings of world leaders or even multilateral meetings of world leaders taking place. But are these two leaders, apart from focusing on areas of common interest, also likely to touch upon without taking any names? Our defense minister mentioned the issue that we've had on our northern border. Similarly, we've had a situation between Russia and Ukraine as well.
Yes, I think the defense minister was very upfront about without actually naming China, saying because given the relationship between China and Russia, India would bring this up or would have brought this up at the ministerial level, and this will also figure. This is expected to figure at the summit level meetings, where India would want to apprise the situation, the Russians about the situation. This was discussed at the RIC as well. So India would want the Russians to use their leverage and influence with the Chinese to see reason why this military escalation that has taken place on the borders in Ladakh needs to be de-escalated, and an agreement between both armies, which has been partially reached at some point at some positions, but not all along the borders, along all the friction points where the military need to step back and the friction needs to be smoothened, and the crisis needs to be diffused. So India would surely be bringing that up with the Russians. On Ukraine, India would present its view on how India sees the situation. The Russians, I'm sure, will explain their part of the view of how they see the troops that they have amassed along the border there. So these issues will be discussed. But I think more importantly, which is of common concern, would be the security situation in Afghanistan that would dominate the talks. Because both sides have concerns, especially on terrorism and fundamentalism and radicalization that may emanate from the Afghan soil. Now, if say fundamentalist ideologies are exported out of Afghanistan to Central Asian countries, that has a direct effect on the Russians. So the Russians are concerned about that. The Indians have been time and again saying that India would want a more inclusive or truly representative government in Afghanistan, which takes care of all minorities, and a crackdown on radicalization and fundamentalism needs to take place so that the Afghan soil is not used for terror activities against third nations, including India. So that is a concern that India has been flagging for a very long time. And I think both at the 2+2 dialogue, this was triggered because External Affairs Minister did refer to this in his opening remarks. And I'm sure that when the two principals meet in a little while from now here at the Hyderabad House, this would be a key point, key concern. Also, India would be bringing up the role, would be apprising Russians of the role that terrorist organizations operating out of Pakistan play. Given the growing closeness of the Pakistanis with the Russians, and given the important role that Russia plays in world affairs.
Right.
Apart from the regional security situation, issues that you referred to at the global level would figure. India and Russia are primarily on the same page when it comes to global issues, including the open backing of India's claim for a seat at the permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council, which Russia has backed India. So all these issues would figure at the summit level meet, apart from taking the bilateral relationship to the next level.
Certainly. Even Iran seems to have been mentioned in terms of revival of the talks to some sort of nuclear deal, getting it going, and Russia had a major role in that earlier as well, and perhaps that is an issue of concern to India too.
Absolutely. What happens with the Iranians is of key concern, and both India and Russia being important regional players, this issue could come up for discussion and could be discussed at this summit, because as you heard the Russian ambassador say, and even the Russian foreign minister at the 2+2 dialogue, saying that all issues of common concern, all international issues and global issues of common concern will be discussed. So the Iranian issue is an issue which has a big bearing on the region and the security architecture of the region and the dynamics in West Asia. So this surely would be an important issue that could come up for discussion.
And in terms of the bilateral relationship, there is so much that India and Russia have done together, and there's progress being made this time round as well with the first 2+2 dialogue, the ministerial dialogue between the defense and foreign ministers of two sides. On other fronts, do you feel that there are areas that India and Russia would like to perhaps improve, work upon better? For example, trade and investments. There's a concern about how in recent years we've not made the kind of progress that at one point of time was thought that we would be making.
So on investments, Gautam, India's made, both countries have made great progress. If you look at the target that they had set themselves for 2025, when it comes to investment, was barely $30 billion. And they achieved
That's a large part because of the hydrocarbons investments that India has made.
Very, very true. There are about $15 billion of investment that India has made, close to about $18 to $20 billion that the Russians have made. So that $30 billion was achieved way back in 2018 itself.
Right.
So they've revised that target to $50 billion for 2025. So in terms of investments, both countries are doing great. And you're right, they are primarily in the energy sector and hydrocarbons. In fact, so much so that India will be inviting the governors of the Far Eastern provinces of the 11 governors of the Far Eastern provinces of Russia for Vibrant Gujarat. This will be a great, place for looking at working out future investments and also involvement of private players in that.
Yes, Gujarat has a huge petrochemical industry, so I guess that really works well.
That's right, Gautam. Coal, diamonds, renewable energy, hydrocarbons. These are the areas that you're looking at in the Far Eastern sector. But apart, if you look at Russia, healthcare, students, connectivity, you're looking at improving the North-South corridor, connectivity in terms of air connectivity. So all these areas are areas where huge investments can take place, not just at G2G agreements or government-to-government agreements, but basically even at these summits, like even at these meetings like say Vibrant Gujarat or Invest India, you have a lot of B2B agreements, business-to-business agreements. So that the government once broadly agree on sectors and approve, and the policies do allow that investment that moves further. Now,
we're getting some images now from Hyderabad House, Amrit, on the screen. I believe these are images of, let me just see to be sure. First, I can't really see the flag right now on the screen, so it's a little difficult for me to make out as to whose arrival are these the images of, but most likely it is you had mentioned, Amrit, that we did have Prime Minister Modi arriving in Hyderabad House a little while earlier. Amrit, can you hear me?
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Amrit. Just tell us what's happening at Hyderabad House right now.
Yeah. The car that you saw and the gentleman who stepped out was Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia. So he's gone inside. So basically now the Russian delegation has started arriving. I think the defense minister is going to follow in a minute or so, and after that we expect President Putin to come. So the Indian delegation, in terms of our External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar and Defense Minister Rajnath Singh are already here. The Prime Minister arrived some time back, which we beamed live images of, and now the Russian delegation has started arriving. We saw Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, step out of the car and go inside the Hyderabad House. The Prime Minister is inside. We are expecting President Putin to arrive any time, and the Prime Minister would come to the forecourt of the Hyderabad House and receive him at the foyer, where the two principals give a handshake for the photo opportunity for the media, and then they head straight into the Nilgiri room for the annual summit. There will be first one-on-one meeting in a restricted format, followed by his delegation, but both delegations, which includes the foreign and the defense ministers, joining, and other secretaries, related secretaries, the commerce secretary, etc., who will be part of the delegation. And as I was saying, the whole gamut of the relationship from defense, energy, connectivity, the civil nuclear cooperation that you have on Kodankulam, the investments, trade, etc. The whole gamut of the bilateral relationship will be discussed, apart from, of course, the regional security situation and the other regional and global issues.
Oh yes, there's no dearth of challenges on the global front. COVID, of course, is one where India and Russia have already been cooperating a lot, and I'm sure they might have something to say about the leaders. Will have something to discuss about this new variant of concern as well.
Absolutely. They've already mentioned that we meet in a fast-changing scenario, and especially given the pandemic situation, and they've actually done great when it comes to cooperation in the fight against COVID-19. Say the Sputnik 5 vaccines, which is a Russian vaccine, which is being co-produced in India. Then, if you remember, India has supplied hydrochloroquine drugs to 25 regional administrators and 60 hospitals for manufacture and use in Russia. Then, the Vande Bharat flights, I think 26 Vande Bharat flights, which had carried about 81 tons of cargo, consisting primarily of pharmaceutical products to Russia when Russia needed them the most. Even when the airspace was shut, the international airport space was shut under special bubble arrangements, Vande Bharat flights evacuated about 11,000 passengers from Russia. And also during the pandemic, over the year and a half, we supplied drugs, medical equipment, PPE, ventilators, and other equipment to Russia when they needed it, and vice versa. they supplied it when India needed it. Remember when the third wave had hit and we were in short supply of ventilators, the Russians did step in to help. So this is basically, as the Foreign Minister said, a time-tested, long relationship. You've had a very important relationship with the USSR since 1947 when you established diplomatic relations, and then after that 1971 agreement of with the USSR of a special relationship that you signed with them, and after that there was an uptick in the relationship. We've been during the Cold War, and we've had an important strategic, and then Russia inherited that relationship from its predecessor, the USSR, and the relationship has, despite India widening its, defense basket, moving away from just the Russian dominance, or even in the defense sector, from a buyer-seller relationship to a co-producer, to co-producing, to joint ventures, to exchange of technology, to joint trainings, etc. So you redefine the relationship, and of course you widened your basket. You established relationships with other countries, including the United States and other countries of the NATO, sometimes which irks the Russians, and that is a point of discussion. For example, the S-400 deal, which the Russians believe that the Americans are trying to sort of destabilize by threatening to impose taxa, but India believes it takes its own sovereign decisions. So India's moved ahead. The Russians have a problem, say, with the Quad or even the very naming of the Indo-Pacific. Now these are wrinkles, but it's an important relationship which has stood the test of time and which is a steady relationship.
Yes.
And the very fact that President Putin took this visit when he's generally avoiding visiting foreign countries during the pandemic speaks of the strength of the relationship despite the wrinkles or divergences which would exist in any healthy relationship between any two countries.
Well, definitely, and there are more and more areas where the multifaceted relationship that we talk about can grow further in terms of how India has mentioned in the past as well. When Prime Minister Modi went to Vladivostok, it was talked about how even people could move to areas in Russia where work needs to be done from India, and perhaps something could move forward on that front as well.
Gautam, could you repeat your question, please?
Where people are required to work in Russia, and India has a lot of labor force as well, which is skilled, and that can also be something that can be, it can be an added dimension to the relationship, where Russia might need people to work on different enterprises and endeavors in, say, their Far East.
Absolutely, Gautam. Manpower requirements is one very significant part of the relationship, especially when it comes to Far East. We saw that at the Far Eastern meeting where, as you rightly say, the Prime Minister in 2019 had traveled to Vladivostok, and during that bilateral meeting with President Putin that came up, and this would figure prominently today again, where India has made that commitment that India has the skilled manpower which with the Russian Far East would like to employ, given the dearth of people working there. And so this would be a prominent part of the discussions between the two leaders, and also the smaller, which will be followed up later in smaller working groups.
Okay, let's go back to what's happened in the T2+2 inaugural dialogue today in terms of the key deliverables that we've had. It's been much talked about how India and India's armed forces desperately need those guns, the Kalashnikovs. That in itself is a huge development today, isn't it?
Absolutely. The AK-203 is the joint production of the AK-203, about 6.01 lakh AK-203 assault rifles, which are going to be produced in Purga in Uttar Pradesh. the contract was today signed, and I think it's a landmark contract between the Indo-Russian Rifles Private Limited and the Russian side. This was signed between Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and General SERGEI, the Russian Defense Minister. So I think this is something which was agreed to. This was in the making, but at this particular visit, this was signed. Now this will have a huge impact on the way our forces, the small arms of equipment of our forces, which will primarily replace the Instar gun that our security forces, including the army, the BSF, etc., carry. So, because the 203 is a modern assault rifle, which has a better technology and is more combat, which has more combat potential, and deals better with future operational challenges. So, I think that's a key example of how the two sides can work together, and India's accent on the Make in India. India now has been, for some time stressing on that India has the infrastructure, India even has the capacity to produce that we can jointly work towards, which is a win-win situation for both countries. So I think this is a fine example. The signing of this contract is a fine example of that. Also, extending of the military technical cooperation protocol from 2021 to 2031.
Yes.
Also, is a great step forward, because under this you will have a technical cooperation between the two militaries, using each other's logistics, using each other's bases, without going through a lot of protocol and red tapeism. For example, say if an Indian Navy ship is sailing on the high seas and it requires some repairs, or it requires some fuel requirements, so they don't need to get in touch back with their base in Delhi and with the naval headquarters or the Western Command headquarters, and they get in touch with Delhi. Delhi speaks to Moscow, and they get a distress. They can just under this agreement, they can just sail into any Russian logistics base, and the two captains of the ship can speak, and it can be sorted out. So that's the sort of cooperation that the two strategic partners are looking at, and I think the agreements, the 4 documents signed today, work towards taking that partnership at an operational level much further.
Certainly, and you mentioned Make in India and how Russia and India have worked together. I think BrahMos is also a big example of that, apart from the T-90 tank, and there are so many other examples that can be given. And in terms of future capabilities, we're talking about 5th generation aircraft as well. India and Russia working together on that, so this looks very promising, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The cooperation in terms of collaboration on BrahMos, the joint exercises that you have, the training exercises that you have, the annual exchange is that you have. For example, Indra 27, which is the first dry services exercises that India held with any country. So your cooperation in terms of your military cooperation and your military technical cooperation, which involves joint research and development, production of advanced defense technologies and systems, is a great leap forward, and strengthening the already existing relationships that the two countries have. And it's not just, as you rightly said, limited to merely military cooperation, but it's also a wide-ranging cooperation which deals with, for example, space cooperation, where you have the outer space cooperation, joint satellite launches, GLONASS navigation system, remote sensing, etc. Now the Gaganyaan, where as I was saying, the training of the 4 Gaganyaan astronauts took place in Russia. So you can be partners. These enabling agreements, what gets decided here at the summit, become enablers or create enabling frameworks for your to becoming partners in space exploration, and your deepening of your cooperation between your ISRO and the Roscosmos, and joint activities in the field of the human space flight program.
Well, certainly that is something again which India and Russia have had a long-standing cooperation on, that particular field, and we can see that moving forward as well, perhaps. But primarily this trip, the focus has been, Amrit, on both enhancing the ties both in the military and defense affairs, and perhaps energy as well. We'll see some aspects of that featuring prominently when these two top leaders are meeting.
What energy did you refer to?
Energy in terms of the overall kind of ties that India and Russia have on the energy front, energy security front.
Absolutely, energy security is a area for cooperation. As we were talking, that out of the major investments that India has done, the majority chunk is in the hydrocarbon sector. But it's not just limited to that. It's as the two sides have discussed earlier, and India is committed to the Paris Agreement on increasing its renewable energy share. So your future energy sources in terms of renewable energies, cooperation in, of course, hydrocarbons remains the key component as of now. But energy partnership is a great partnership given the huge resources in the Far East, and the vision that India has for becoming, for changing the whole energy setup and changing the energy dynamics. So I think Russia and India are coming up as great partners in that, Gautam.
Well, certainly. And in terms of how this, what kind of a message will the world get from this visit as well? That is also something that perhaps we need to look out for, because it has a lot of meaning for across the Atlantic to closer home in Asia itself, for China too.
Absolutely. There would be a lot of capitals which will be watching what comes out of the summit at New Delhi, which includes Washington DC, Beijing, Tehran, Kabul, even Islamabad. So, your Central Asian countries, because these are two important, powerful players who are meeting in, as the Foreign Affairs Minister said, when the state of affairs of the world is in a flux, not just to the COVID pandemic, but geostrategically also. So I think, when the two leaders meet, and what comes out in the joint statement will be very closely scrutinized. The Americans would be interested in, what sort of a defense partnership is building up between the two countries, and how they've recalibrated their relationship, given the increasing role that India wishes to play and the four countries wish to involve India in. So how India does that balancing and recalibration is something which, say, the Americans or even Japan and Australia would be very, very keen to watch. Though there are feelers from the Americans say that even if, when the S-100 deliveries S-400 deliveries happen, CATSA might not come into play, and India could be given a waiver. Now, the Americans haven't clearly said that, but there have been feelers enough that there could be something worked around that. Now, the world will be carefully interested watching this with keen interest at how India maneuvers that. Its relationship with its old time-tested friend Russia, and also its increasing relationship with other countries, and how India.
Yeah, let's take for example the Triumph system itself, the S-400. It's going through. It's a $5 billion deal. It was done years ago, and now we're getting components as well, and that's going to be another huge landmark as far as India's cooperation with Russia goes, and India and Russia bolstering India's defense. And there is CATSA, of course. We've had noises being made over there in the US that CATSA should be brought to bear on this particular matter, but India has been very clear, because the S-400 is a unique system. It's a defense system that no one else really has, and it fits India's needs, and I think we've been able to convey that effectively to the US as well, haven't we?
Absolutely. I think, let's be honest about it, the Americans are not very happy about the S-400 or the kind of deal happening between the Russians and the Indians.
I mean, we talk about the Iron Dome in the Israeli context, and perhaps the S-400 is even better than that.
Yeah, it could prove to be our Iron Dome, or as you say, it's better than that. So it is something which India needs, and these are India's defense needs or security needs. Now, honestly, the Americans aren't very happy about that. The Americans have conveyed that clearly to the Indians. But I think the Indians have been very steadfast on that, look, we one are not, all our security concerns are from a defensive point of view. We are not the aggressors. And secondly, we have a growing relationship with the United States. We value that relationship, but we choose to maintain our strategic independence and our sovereign stance. And we will, while we value a strategic relationship with the United States, and the Americans, I think, have been very, very clearly told that we choose to retain our strategic sovereignty and take decisions which are in our interest without infringing on any other country's security, only protecting your security domain, and we will cooperate with anyone and everybody who helps us achieve that. So that is where the Russians come into play. And I think this is what Sergei Lavrov, when he was asked after the 2+2 meeting, said. That he said the Indians have made it very clear, and he sees that the Americans are trying to destabilize this partnership, but he sees it very, very clearly that India is asserting its sovereign stance on that. And from an Indian point of view, as I've said, that India retains the right to maintain its sovereignty in its own self-interest, because it does not see one relationship, impinging on another relationship. And I think very steadfastly and very patiently, India has been able to convey this to the Americans, which the Americans are coming around to understand. But yes, they still have reservations about furthering military cooperation or growing military cooperation with between India and Russia. So this is something that our diplomacy, where our diplomats and our diplomacy comes into play, saying that India is essentially looking at a safer world, protecting its self-interest, and establishing a fair and an equitable world order, and not being an aggressor. So, yet protecting its interests from the aggressors. So I think that has been very clearly told, and today when the two principles meet, they'll be reiterating the need for a fair, equitable world order, and in that context, India will be bringing up, say, the issues of what India is doing in the Indo-Pacific, or the Quad, or the cooperation in Quad, with vis-a-vis other countries who have asserted their dominance over what they consider their backwaters, and which is not in line with a free, fair, equitable world order.
Right. I will just stick around because that key meeting is still taking place, and we would love to have you with us for a little while longer. But let's just apprise our viewers with a little more of what has happened earlier through the day as well. Just to put things in context, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met in New Delhi today as well. This was apart from the 2+2, and during his opening remarks, External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar said that the partnership between India and Russia is special and unique. He also added that Prime Minister Modi and Russian President Putin share a relationship of great trust and confidence.
unique event. Prime Minister Modi and President Putin share a relationship of great trust and confidence. They will actually be meeting. The annual summit is taking place after a gap of 2 years because of the COVID. So we are looking forward to some very significant outcomes from the summit. Our partnership is indeed very special, it's very unique, and we are very conscious that in a world of rapid geopolitical changes, it has in fact been remarkably steady and strong. And I would also like to take the opportunity to underline that we are very satisfied with our bilateral relations and the state of our cooperation.
And Defense Minister RAJNATH Singh, as well as Russian Defense Minister General SERGEI SHOIGU, signed agreements between India and Russia as well. The agreements signed include protocol on amending the agreement between the Government of the Republic of India and the Government of the Russian Federation on cooperation in the field of Kalashnikov series small arms manufacturing for procurement of quality 6,01,427 of 7.63 into 39 mm assault rifles AK-203 through Indo-Russia Rifles Private Agreement on Program for Military Technical Cooperation from 2021 to 2031. Another agreement which was signed was the Protocol on Amending Agreement on Cooperation in the Field of Kalashnikov Series Small Arms Manufacturing dated 18th of February 2019 and a protocol of the 20th IRIGC M and MTC as well. So that's what happened earlier in the day, the highlights of that 2+2 inaugural 2+2 ministerial meeting between India and Russia. And right now, of course, the summit level meeting is taking place. President Putin is here in New Delhi and Prime Minister Modi is hosting him at Hyderabad House. My colleague AMRITPAL Singh has been with me on the phone line through the course of that bilateral meeting. And Amrit, more can be expected from this, apart from how the 2+2 ministerial, the first one ever between India and Russia, and India only has ministerials, these 2+2 ministerials with its Quad partners, and that's a unique kind of a dimension that's been stretched to Russia as well. Do you think that there will be more as far as this summit meet is also concerned?
Yes, by institutionalizing the 2+2 dialogue, what you one doing is, so you, as I was saying, you have an active political engagement with them, and you have an active defense and a very robust defense relationship with them, and your foreign office consultations happen, your foreign ministers meet, your defense ministers meet, your services chiefs meet, tri-services, military joint military exercises happen, etc. But by institutionalizing this dialogue, and what happens is that you streamline the process, and there is a structured way to move forward annually. Yes, and also then this thing that you just spoke about, that given that you have this institutionalized dialogue with just 3 other countries, and who are Quad countries, and you're widely seen as cooperating with them, and who are perceived to be adversarial with Russia. So I think the symbolism of it also carries weight. Gautam, I can tell you now that we can expect President Putin to arrive any moment at the Hyderabad House. I hope my cameras are showing you the visuals of Prime Minister Narendra Modi waiting at the Hyderabad House to receive President Putin as soon as he arrives here. And the sense that I'm gathering here at the Hyderabad House, that yes, the gates have opened. The President Putin has arrived at the Hyderabad House. His convoy would go up right to the foyer where Prime Minister Narendra Modi would be receiving the Russian
Okay. In fact, Amrit, we are cutting to those images now. We can see the cavalcade moving in through the main gate of Hyderabad House, and we will, I'm sure, very soon get the images of the two leaders meeting warmly as well.
बैठक हो रही है 2019 के बाद दोनों नेता प्रत्यक्ष रूप से आमने सामने मिल रहे हैं। पिछली बैठक 2019 में हुई थी, उसके बाद वर्चुअल रूप से और टेलीफोन पर बातचीत हुई थी, लेकिन आमने सामने की 2019 के बाद ये पहली बैठक। इस वक्त हैदराबाद हाउस से सीधे दृश्य हम देख रहे हैं दोनों नेताओं के आगमन के, इस बैठक के आगाज के। और रूस के राष्ट्रपति व्लादिमीर पुतिन और भारतीय प्रधानमंत्री और मेघना, एक बार फिर से लौटते हैं आपकी तरफ। तो एक नए अध्याय का आगाज हो रहा है आज भारत और रूस के संबंधों में।
There you see it then, the two leaders meeting after a long time. The last time they physically met was in 2019. That's when the summit had taken place between the two leaders bilaterally. After that, there were occasions, several of them, that they have met in the virtual format, in bilateral, in multilateral settings. They've spoken on the phone quite a few times through the course of this year itself as well. But this is the first physical meeting that they've been having in a long time, since 2019. The last year, the bilateral summit could not take place physically, but this time around it's happening. So it is something I'm sure that the two leaders have been looking forward to for a long time, especially in terms of what India and Russia have achieved in the past through the decades of ties that we've had, and there's a lot more in store, a lot more to come, as you know, you may know, because of what has happened today itself, in terms of how the Indian Armed Forces had been waiting for modern rifles for a long time, and very soon they will have them, because the deal is done. More than 6 lakh rifles will be manufactured jointly between India and Russia. There's a company that's been set up for that purpose as well, and those rifles will be made in India. So it's a typical example of Make in India, Russian technology and Indian manufacturing capabilities coming together.
जो निजी प्रतिबद्धता है, उसका ये एक प्रकार से प्रतीक है, और भारत रशिया संबंधों का कितना महत्व है वो इससे साफ होता है, और इसके लिए मैं आपका बहुत आभारी हूँ।
Ваше превосходительство, мой дорогой друг, президент Российской Федерации Владимир Владимирович Путин, приветствую вас в день для 21-го ежегодного двустороннего саммита. Я также приветствую всех членов делегации Российской Федерации. Я знаю, что за последние практически 2 года это только ваш второй визит за рубежом. Это свидетельствует о вашей личной приверженности нашим отношениям. Несмотря на все сложности, связанные с пандемией, вы посещаете Индию. Это говорит о вашей любви к Индии.
कोविड की चुनौतियों के बावजूद भारत और रूस के संबंधों की रफ्तार में कोई बदलाव नहीं आया है। हमारी स्पेशल एंड प्रिविलेज स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप निरंतर मजबूत होती गई है।
Несмотря на сложности пандемии, нет никаких изменений в темпе развития наших двусторонних отношений между Индией и Россией. Наше особо привилегированное стратегическое партнерство продолжает укрепляться.
कोविड के खिलाफ लड़ाई में भी दोनों देशों के बीच बेहतरीन सहयोग रहा, चाहे वैक्सीन ट्रायल्स और उत्पादन में हो, मानवीय सहायता के लिए हो, या एक दूसरे के नागरिकों की देश वापसी के लिए हो।
В борьбе против ковид сотрудничество между нашими странами было тесным, будто это испытание и производство вакцин, гуманитарная помощь или помощь людям вернуться на свою родину в сложное время.
एक्सेलेंसी, वर्ष 2021 हमारे द्विपक्षीय संबंधों के लिए कई मायनों में महत्वपूर्ण है। इस वर्ष 1971 की ट्रीटी ऑफ पीस, फ्रेंडशिप एंड कोऑपरेशन के 5 दशक और हमारी स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप के 2 दशक पूरे हो रहे हैं। इस विशेष वर्ष में आपके साथ फिर मिल पाना मेरे लिए हर्ष की बात है, क्योंकि हमारी स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप में पिछले 20 वर्षों में जो उल्लेखनीय प्रगति हुई है, उसके मुख्य सूत्रधार आप ही रहे हैं।
Ваше превосходительство, 2021 год является важным для двусторонних отношений по разным причинам. В этом году мы отмечаем 50-летие договора о мире, дружбе и сотрудничестве между Индией и Советским Союзом от 1971 года, 2 десятилетия нашего стратегического партнерства, поэтому мне очень приятно встретиться с вами в этом особом году, потому что за все достижения наших двусторонних отношений, за все эти достижения в нашем стратегическом партнерстве за последние 20 лет стоите именно вы.
पिछले कई दशकों में वैश्विक स्तर पर कई फंडामेंटल बदलाव आए, कई तरह के जियोपॉलिटिकल समीकरण उभरे, किंतु इन सभी वेरिएबल्स के बीच भारत रूस मित्रता एक कांस्टेंट रही है। दोनों देशों ने न सिर्फ एक दूसरे के साथ निसंकोच सहयोग किया है, एक दूसरे की सेंसिटिविटीज का भी विशेष ख्याल रखा है। यह सचमुच इंटरस्टेट दोस्ती का एक यूनिक और विश्वस्त मॉडल है।
На протяжении последних нескольких десятилетий на мировой арене было много фундаментальных изменений, перемен, возникали разные геополитические формирования. Однако среди всех этих изменений то, что осталось неизменной, это российско-индийская дружба. Обе наши страны не только сотрудничают друг с другом, но и относятся к чувствительностям друг друга с особой заботой. Это действительно уникальная и основанная на доверии модель межгосударственной дружбы.
एक्सेलेंसी 2021 हमारे स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप के लिए भी विशेष है। आज हमारे विदेश एवं रक्षा मंत्रियों के बीच 2+2 डायलॉग की पहली बैठक हुई। इससे हमारे व्यवहारिक सहयोग को बढ़ाने का एक नया मैकेनिज्म शुरू हुआ है।
Ваше превосходительство, 2021 год является важным и для нашего стратегического партнерства. Сегодня состоялась первая встреча глав внешнеполитических и оборонных ведомств в формате 2+2. Этим мы запустили еще один новый механизм для укрепления практического сотрудничества.
अफगानिस्तान और दूसरे क्षेत्रीय विषयों पर भी हम निरंतर संपर्क में रहे हैं। ईस्टर्न इकोनॉमिक फोरम और व्लादिवोस्तोक समिट से शुरू हुई रीजनल पार्टनरशिप आज रशियन फार ईस्ट और भारत के राज्यों के बीच वास्तविक सहयोग में बदल रही है।
Мы были в регулярном контакте по Афганистану и по ряду других вопросов. Наше межрегиональное партнерство, которое началось на Восточном экономическом форуме и на нашем с вами саммите в Востоке, сейчас превращается в конкретное сотрудничество между Российским и Дальним Востоком и Штатами Индии.
आर्थिक क्षेत्र में भी अपने रिश्तों को और घनिष्ठ बनाने के लिए हम एक लॉन्ग टर्म विजन अपना रहे हैं। हमने 2025 तक $30 बिलियन के ट्रेड और $50 बिलियन के निवेश का लक्ष्य रखा है। इन लक्ष्यों तक पहुंचने के लिए हमें अपनी बिजनेस कम्युनिटीज को गाइड करना चाहिए।
Также в экономической сфере мы принимаем долгосрочное видение для укрепления наших отношений. Мы поставили цель увеличивать взаимный товарооборот до $30 миллиардов к 2025 году и увеличить взаимные инвестиции до $50 миллиардов. Для достижения этих целей мы должны ориентировать наше бизнес-сообщество.
विभिन्न सेक्टरों में आज हुए हमारे समझौतों से इसमें मदद मिलेगी। मेक इन इंडिया कार्यक्रम के तहत को डेवलपमेंट और को प्रोडक्शन से हमारा रक्षा सहयोग और मजबूत हो रहा है। स्पेस और सिविल न्यूक्लियर क्षेत्रों में भी हमारा सहयोग आगे बढ़ रहा है।
Заключенные сегодня соглашения в разных сферах также нам помогут расширять наше сотрудничество. Наше оборонное сотрудничество углубляется посредством совместной разработки, совместного производства в рамках нашей программы Make in India, Делай вид. Также расширяется сотрудничество в сфере космоса и в сфере гражданской ядерной энергетики.
नेम में ऑब्जर्वर और IORA में डायलॉग पार्टनर बनने के लिए रूस को बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूँ। इन दोनों मंचों में रूस की उपस्थिति का समर्थन करना हमारे लिए खुशी की बात थी। अनेक क्षेत्रीय और वैश्विक मुद्दों पर भारत और रूस का एक जैसा मत है। आज की बैठक में हमें इन पर चर्चा करने का अवसर मिलेगा।
Хочу поздравить Россию с получением статуса наблюдателя в движении неприсоединения и также статус партнера по диалогу в рамках Ассоциации стран бассейна Индийского океана. Мы были рады поддерживать присутствие России на этих площадках. В Индии и России схожие позиции по многим региональным и глобальным вопросам. Сегодня в нашей встрече у нас будет возможность обменяться мнениями по всем этим вопросам.
ऐसे से एक बार फिर भारत में आपका स्वागत करता हूँ, आपके डेलीगेशन का स्वागत करता हूँ। इतनी व्यस्तता के बीच भी आपने भारत आने के लिए समय निकाला, ये हमारे लिए बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। मुझे विश्वास है कि आज की चर्चा हमारे संबंधों के लिए बहुत उल्लेखनीय होगी। फिर एक बार आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
Ваше превосходительство, еще раз добро пожаловать в видео. Также хочу приветствовать всех членов российской делегации. Несмотря на ваш насыщенный график, вы нашли время посетить нас. Это для нас очень важно. Я уверен, что наши сегодняшние дискуссии будут весьма полезными для наших отношений. Еще раз добро пожаловать. Спасибо.
Спасибо большое, уважаемый премьер-министр, дорогой друг. Мне очень приятно быть снова в дружественной стране, в Индии.
Dear Prime Minister, dear friends, I'm so very happy to be able to travel here to visit the friendly country of India.
Мы проводим саммиты на высшем уровне регулярно, каждый год, поочередно и в Индии, и в России.
We're holding summits every year, taking turns in India and in Russia.
К сожалению, в прошлом году мы пропустили из-за пандемии.
Unfortunately, we had to skip last year because of the pandemic.
Но все равно наша очередь приезжать в Индию, я благодарю вас за приглашение.
Still, it is our turn to travel to India, so I'd like to thank you for your invitation.
Мы относимся к Индии как к великой державе, с дружественным нам народом и с замечательной предысторией наших отношений.
We perceive India as a great power, a friendly nation, and a time-tested friend.
Отношения между нашими странами развиваются, устремлены в будущее.
The relations between our countries are developing and are looking into the future.
Если в прошлом году у нас наблюдался спад товарооборота на 17 лишним процентов, то за первые 9 месяцев текущего года рост составил уже больше 38%.
Last year, the trade has decreased by 17%. This year, in the first 9 months of this year, we see an increase by 38%.
И у нас, безусловно, есть все возможности достичь тех уровней товарооборота, о которых вы сказали.
And naturally, we have every opportunity to reach the levels of trade that you have spoken before.
Это касается и инвестиционной деятельности.
And the same applies to investments.
Сейчас 38 миллиардов, примерно равно распределяется, чуть больше инвестиций с российской стороны.
Right now, the mutual investment stands at about 38 billion, with a bit more investments coming from the Russian side.
Но мы действительно сотрудничаем, работаем в очень важных, перспективных направлениях.
We are truly cooperating and working on very important and promising matters.
Это касается энергетики, это касается высоких технологий, включая космос.
That applies to the energy sector and high tech, including space.
И уверен, что здесь программа, о которой мы говорили, будут реализованы, в том числе и подготовка индийского космонавта.
And I think that the programs that we will be discussing here today will be implemented fully, including the training of Indian spacemen, cosmonauts.
Мы работаем в военно-технической области, причем так, как не работаем с одним нашим партнером.
We also cooperate greatly in military and technical sphere, like with no other country.
Имею в виду, что мы вместе занимаемся разработками высокотехнологичной военной продукции и производством, в том числе в Индии.
By that I mean that we develop high technologies together as well as produce in India.
У нас есть еще очень важная повестка, которая, безусловно, представляет интерес как для Индии, так и для России. Я имею в виду все, что связано с заботой об окружающей среде.
We also have common important agenda that is of interest both to India and Russia, and by that I mean environmental cooperation.
Мы думаем об этом, думаем о зеленой повестке, о нашей экономике, о ее развитии.
We think about the green agenda and about the development of our economies.
Но, конечно, мы исходим из реалий, из потребностей наших экономик, из необходимости постоянно повышать уровень жизни наших граждан.
But naturally we proceed from the reality and the needs of our economies, that is to consistently increase the level of life for our citizens.
Мы продолжаем активно работать на международной арене, и, как вы сказали, действительно у нас наши позиции по очень многим вопросам совпадают.
We continue to cooperate jointly on global agenda, and as you have said, indeed, our positions are quite similar or coincide.
Нас, безусловно, беспокоит все, что связано с терроризмом.
Naturally, we are concerned about everything that has to do with terrorism.
И борьбой с ним, даже как с наркотиками, с организованной преступностью.
I mean the fight against terrorism, also fighting drug trafficking and organized crime.
В этой связи, конечно, нас не может не беспокоить ситуация и то, как она развивается в Афганистане.
And with that regard, naturally, we are concerned about the developments of the situation in Afghanistan.
Ну и наши коллеги здесь, министр иностранных дел и министр обороны, это первая встреча в таком формате, но говорит о том, что мы продолжаем развивать отношения и на международной арене, и в военной сфере, непосредственно в военной сфере.
As we have our colleagues with us today, I mean foreign ministers and defense ministers, after their inaugural meeting, that means that we continue to develop our cooperation on the international agenda and in the military sphere.
Мы проводим совместные военные учения.
We hold joint military exercises.
И на территории Индии, на территории России. Мы благодарны вам за это внимание к этой составляющей нашей работы.
We hold joint military exercises both on the Indian and Russian territory. I'd like to thank you for your attention to this component of our cooperation.
Намерены и дальше работать по этому направлению.
And we intend to work further on that matter.
И еще раз большое вам спасибо за приглашение.
Once again, thank you very much for your invitation.
Thank you.
Well, there you heard the remarks of both the leaders. Their summit meeting has begun officially, and in the opening remarks they were very, very clear as to how they see the kind of progress that India and Russia have made in taking their bilateral relationship forward. It is not just about strategic matters. Prime Minister Modi very specifically mentioned that we need to pay more attention to enhancing trade and investment, and Vladimir Putin was very quick to point out that things have been making progress, and India and Russia are well on course to meet that goal of $50 billion in bilateral investments by 2025, and in terms of trade it will be $30 billion. He said there was an impact of COVID on trade, for example, that was down the last year, but this year itself the enhancement has been quite remarkable. About 38% is what he mentioned, if I got it correctly. And the other aspects as well too, he said, of our cooperation are making very good progress, and we can build upon that even further. Prime Minister Modi was very grateful to President Putin that he could make it here despite the hindrances of COVID. He's here for 6 hours, so it's a quick trip, but this is the first time that he's really stepped out, except for that one meeting in June with President Biden in Geneva. He's not been out of Russia for more than 1.5 years, and that makes it an occasion, this particular bilateral meeting, that the entire world is paying a lot of attention to, and it has specific messages for a number of global players, including both the US and China, not to mention our other neighbor Pakistan. And